They say there is no pain greater than burying your own child. But even worse is discovering that the death wasn't an accident. I am Evelyn Parker, just an ordinary grandmother, until that fateful rainy day when I found my grandsons living under a bridge. And from that moment on, a revenge began. One carried out in the name of love. Before we begin this story, let me know where you are listening from in the comments below. My name is Evelyn Parker. I'm 68 years old. And what I'm about to tell you today will forever change the way you see your own family. I never imagined I'd find my grandsons living under a bridge, especially after being told they'd moved to Canada years ago. People say grief fades, but it doesn't. It only changes shape. 3 years after Ethan's death, my house in Lockhart felt like a tomb. Too big, too quiet, filled with ghosts that smelled like motor oil and aftershave. I tried to fill the silence by quilting. Stitch by stitch, I told myself. Healing was possible, even if the thread kept breaking. That afternoon, I left class just as the sky split open. Texas rain doesn't whisper, it roars. I barely made it to my Buick before it came down in sheets. I turned off the main road near the old stone bridge by the river. It's been there since before I was born, stubborn and gray, like an old soul that refuses to crumble. The rain hammered the roof. Through the windshield, I caught a flash of movement beneath the bridge. 2 figures huddled together, shivering. Probably runaways, I thought, until lightning illuminated their faces. My breath stopped. Freckles, green eyes, Ethan's eyes. "Jake?" I whispered. The taller boy flinched. The smaller one, Oliver, gripped a torn backpack like it was life itself. I got out, the rain biting through my cardigan, and took a few steps closer. "It's Grandma," I said, my voice cracking through the storm. "It's me." Jake stared, disbelieving. "Mom said..." He swallowed. "She said you didn't want us anymore." The world tilted. For a moment, I thought my knees would give out. My fingers dug into the cold stone wall, trying to hold on to something solid as the words sank in. I moved toward them slowly, every step shaking. "That's not true," I whispered. "Come with me, right now." Jake hesitated, eyes darting toward the dark trees behind us. Oliver clung to his arm. The rain fell harder, filling the silence between thunderclaps. Finally, Jake gave a single, broken nod. I opened the car door and ushered them inside. The smell hit first. Smoke, mud, something sharp and metallic. Bruises shadowed Jake's wrist. I clenched the steering wheel until my knuckles went white, forcing my voice to stay calm. "We'll go home," I said. "You'll be safe there." We drove in silence. The wipers kept a heartbeat rhythm. Thump, thump, thump. My mind spun through old memories. Ethan teaching Jake to fish, Samantha's soft voice saying she needed space after the funeral, the letter about Canada and new beginnings. I'd believed her. God help me, I had. Now my grandsons were sitting in the back seat, dirty, trembling, and silent. When we reached my driveway, the rain had thinned to a gray mist. I hurried them inside, the porch light flickering like it remembered happier days. The house seemed to hold its breath. "Shoes off," I said automatically, because order was the only thing that kept me upright. "Let's get you dry." They obeyed without a word. Oliver's hoodie clung to him, soaked through. Jake's jeans were stiff with mud. I fetched towels, old sweats, and started a bath. The air smelled of soap and damp cotton, mundane, human, safe. While they cleaned up, I cooked. The motions came back like muscle memory. Onions, carrots, beef, the same stew Ethan loved. The scent filled the kitchen, a fragile echo of the past. I poured cocoa into chipped mugs and set the table, because sometimes love hides in the rituals we refuse to give up. They came out in borrowed clothes that hung off them like costumes. Oliver sat close enough for his elbow to brush mine. Jake watched me, wary, as if waiting for the kindness to vanish. "Eat," I said softly. "Please." They did, quietly, quickly, like boys who hadn't been allowed to eat without permission. When the bowls were empty, I asked the question I'd been avoiding. "Where's your mother?" Jake stared at his hands. "Not here." "She said you went to Canada." He shook his head. "We never went anywhere. She said we couldn't see you because you didn't want us. She said you made her leave." My heart clenched. I wanted to deny it right then, but my voice betrayed me, thin and trembling. "That's not true. I wanted you both more than anything." Oliver looked up at me, eyes glassy. "Can we stay here? Just for tonight?" "For as long as you need," I said. "You're home now." For a moment, silence filled the kitchen. Then Jake exhaled, the first real breath I'd heard him take. Outside, the rain softened to a whisper. I caught my reflection in the window, lined, old, but not empty anymore. Later, I led them to the guest room I'd kept ready out of habit. The quilt on the bed was one I'd made the winter after Ethan died. Crooked stitches, mismatched blues, but every piece sewn with hope. I tucked them in, brushing damp hair from Oliver's forehead. The boy's hand reached for mine, small and trembling, and for the first time in years, I felt warmth spread through me. As I turned to leave, Jake's voice broke the dark. "Grandma, Mom said you didn't want us anymore." I paused at the doorway, tears blurring the shadows. "Well," I said softly, "she lied." The clock ticked. The river outside kept moving, and somewhere deep inside I felt it, the faint, impossible spark of something I'd thought was gone forever. Hope. The morning after the storm, sunlight spilled through the blinds, like it had forgotten what kind of house it was entering. The world outside looked clean, washed, and new. Inside, I felt anything but. Jake and Oliver slept late, curled up like puppies that had finally stopped running. I stood in the doorway for a long time, listening to their breathing. Every inhale was a tiny proof that they were real, that last night hadn't been another cruel dream I'd have to wake from. When they finally stirred, I was already in the kitchen frying eggs. The sound of the spatula on the pan, the smell of butter. It reminded me of Ethan at their age, padding in barefoot and grinning like mornings belonged to him. Jake sat down first, guarded but polite. Oliver followed, hair sticking up like a halo of static. "You boys sleep all right?" I asked. Jake nodded, eyes still scanning the room like he didn't trust safety yet. Oliver grinned through a mouthful of toast. "Best bed ever," he said. It was the kind of small miracle that could undo a heart. After breakfast, I asked the question I'd been holding back since the bridge. "What happened, boys? Where's your mom?" Jake's shoulders stiffened. He didn't meet my eyes. "We were supposed to go to Canada," he said. "That's what she told everyone. But we never went." Oliver fidgeted with his fork. "We stayed with different people for a while. Mom said it was just until things got better." I leaned forward, keeping my voice steady. "What things?" Jake hesitated, then spoke in a flat tone too old for his 14 years. "Money. She spent all the insurance after Dad died. Said it was hers. Then Frank showed up." "Frank?" "Her boyfriend," Jake said. "He said we were too much trouble, that the house was his now. I felt my stomach tighten. And you left? Jake nodded. One night he yelled at her. She hit him back. He grabbed her. We ran. I reached across the table, placing my hand over his. His skin was cold, his fingers thin. You did the right thing, I said softly. But inside, something dark began to coil. After they went to the living room to watch TV, I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee and my guilt. Every drop of silence carried Ethan's voice. You promised to look after them, Mom. And I had failed. I'd trusted Samantha, the woman who'd once sat in this kitchen laughing, calling me Mom herself, to protect my grandsons. Around noon, I gathered my courage and dialed her number. To my surprise, it still worked. She answered on the second ring, her voice smooth and bright, the kind of tone people use when they think they're still in control. Evelyn! Oh my God, it's been ages. Samantha, I said quietly. Where are you? A pause. Texas. Why? I found Jake and Oliver last night, under the bridge by Lockhart Creek. Silence. Then, sharp as a blade. You shouldn't have done that. They're children, Sam. They were cold, hungry. You have no idea what you're getting into, she snapped. Just bring them back, Evelyn. You can't keep them, not legally. The line went dead before I could reply. I sat there staring at the receiver, my hand trembling. She sounded nothing like the Samantha I knew. There was something else in her voice now. Fear, maybe. Or desperation. That night, after the boys were asleep, I heard tires crunching on gravel outside. My pulse jumped. I peered through the curtain. A black pickup idled at the edge of the drive, headlights still on. A man stepped out. Stocky, confident, the kind of man who thought the world owed him respect. He walked up to my porch and knocked once, loud enough to rattle the glass. I opened the door halfway. Can I help you? You, Evelyn Parker? His voice carried the twang of someone who'd spent too much time talking down to people. I am. I'm Frank Dalton, Samantha's partner. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You've got something that belongs to her. My fingers tightened on the doorframe. You mean her sons? He leaned forward slightly. I caught the smell of cheap cologne and motor oil. Yeah, those boys. She's been worried sick. I almost laughed. Worried sick? They were sleeping under a bridge. His expression flickered. Annoyance, then that same cold confidence. Listen, lady, this doesn't have to get messy. Hand them over, and nobody needs to make a big deal of it. I felt the tremor in my chest, but my voice came out steady. They're not going anywhere. He studied me for a moment, eyes narrowing. You sure you want to do this? You don't know what you're mixed up in. Before I could answer, the porch light caught something metallic in his pocket. A car key. Or maybe a knife. I met his stare without blinking. If you have business here, you can talk to the sheriff. He gave a small, mocking laugh. All right, Grandma, have it your way, but don't say I didn't warn you. He turned and walked back to his truck, the gravel crunching under his boots. The engine roared, and he drove off into the dark. I locked the door and leaned against it, shaking. My reflection in the glass looked like a stranger. Gray hair plastered to my forehead, eyes burning with something that wasn't fear anymore. It was resolve. Later, when I finally crawled into bed, I stared at the ceiling, the ticking clock marking each second like a countdown. Outside, the night hummed with crickets. Inside, I heard the echo of Frank's voice. You don't know what you're mixed up in. But I did now. I was mixed up in blood, in lies, and in the one thing I had left worth fighting for: my family. And for the first time in 3 years, I felt alive. The morning after Frank's visit, I woke before dawn, my heart already racing like it knew something I didn't. The house was quiet except for the hum of the old refrigerator and the soft creak of the ceiling fan. Outside, the fog clung to the fields, and everything looked blurred, like the world itself wasn't ready to face what was coming. I stood in the hallway and listened. Jake and Oliver were still asleep, tangled in quilts, breathing deep and even. I'd forgotten how small children sound when they finally rest safe, like a prayer whispered in their sleep. For a moment, I let myself believe we could stay like this forever. But peace, I've learned, is never free. By the time the sun burned through the mist, I was in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, hair tied back, cooking breakfast like a woman trying to anchor herself to the ordinary. The smell of bacon filled the air, warm and human. It almost drowned out the fear. When the boys came in, they were quieter than usual. Jake's eyes darted to the window, like he expected that truck to be parked there again. Oliver clung to a stuffed bear I hadn't seen in years. Ethan's old one, pulled from a forgotten box in the attic. "You boys eat," I said softly. "We've got a long day." After breakfast, I gathered their dirty clothes and carried them to the laundry room. The smell of damp earth and smoke still clung to the fabric. While the washer churned, I stood there gripping the counter, the memory of Frank's sneer replaying in my head. "You don't know what you're mixed up in." But I was starting to. I looked around my house, the same house where Ethan had taken his first steps, where we'd celebrated every birthday with too much frosting and laughter that reached the rafters. Now, it felt like a fortress under siege. I spent the morning cleaning every corner, not out of vanity, but out of instinct. A clean space was one I could control. I found myself scrubbing the counter like I could wash away the lies that had dragged us here. When the chores were done, I decided to make something special. My hands moved automatically through the motions of an old recipe Ethan used to love: a beef stew, thick with potatoes, garlic, and thyme. The smell of it simmering filled the house, clinging to the curtains, softening the edges of everything. Oliver helped me set the table, his small fingers brushing mine as he placed the silverware. "Grandma," he whispered, "can we stay here forever?" I smiled, though my throat tightened. "Forever's a long time, honey. Let's just start with today." That night, I found an old photo album tucked behind the flower tins. Inside were snapshots of Ethan as a boy, standing in front of a fishing pond, grinning with a frog in his hand, his hair sticking out every which way. Jake looked so much like him, it hurt. When Jake wandered into the kitchen, I showed him the photo. "That was your dad," I said quietly. "He could never resist trouble or mud." Jake smiled faintly. "I remember that pond. He taught me how to skip rocks there." We fell silent, the air heavy with shared memories and the ache of what was gone. Later, as the stew simmered, I noticed the boys' clothes drying on the line, the afternoon light turning the fabric gold. Something inside me softened. For the first time in years, the house felt alive again. I called my neighbor Donna Myers, a family friend and lawyer who'd helped me after Ethan's death. "Donna," I said, "I think I'm in trouble." She came over an hour later, all brisk and competent in her gray suit and soft voice, I poured her coffee and told her everything. The bridge, Samantha's call, Frank's visit. Donna listened without interrupting, then took a slow sip. Evelyn, you did the right thing bringing the boys home. But if Samantha reported this as kidnapping? She what? Donna sighed. I've seen it before. A parent loses custody and spirit long before the law catches up. If she's desperate, she'll play dirty. Before I could answer, the phone rang. I picked it up. Mrs. Parker? A man's voice said. This is Detective Brooks from the Lockhart Police Department. We received a report that you might be holding 2 minors without consent. I froze. My eyes met Donna's. She mouthed, Stay calm. Yes, Detective, I said carefully. They're my grandsons. Their mother abandoned them. He hesitated. We just need to verify their safety, ma'am. We can come by today. Donna took the receiver from me. Detective Brooks, this is Attorney Donna Myers. My client is cooperating fully. We'll arrange a visit tomorrow morning. On record. When she hung up, my hands were shaking. Donna placed hers over mine. You did nothing wrong, Evelyn. But from now on, document everything. Keep records, photos, messages, anything that proves neglect. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked the house barefoot, checking locks, listening to the sighs of the old wood. The boys slept soundly, unaware that the storm was circling again. In the living room, the stew pot still sat on the stove, cold and half-eaten. The house smelled of thyme and smoke, of comfort trying to survive fear. I sat by the window with a cup of tea, staring at the dark stretch of road beyond the trees. Every pair of headlights that passed made my pulse spike. When my phone buzzed, I nearly dropped it. A new message blinked on the screen. Unknown number. Old lady, you should have listened. Give them back before someone gets hurt. My breath caught. My reflection in the glass stared back. Tired, furious, trembling, but not broken. I pressed delete. Then I went to the hall closet, found Ethan's old baseball bat, and leaned it beside my bed. If they wanted to come for us, they'd have to go through me first. Outside, the crickets sang, the wind brushed the trees, and the house seemed to whisper in the dark, half warning, half promise. Tomorrow, I'd face the law, the lies, and the ghosts of my own choices. But tonight, I would protect what was mine. And for the first time in years, I felt something stronger than grief. I felt purpose. The morning air felt heavy, thick with the kind of quiet that warns you something is coming. I didn't need the clock to tell me it was just past 7. The house had that early stillness before the world stirs. Jake and Oliver were still asleep in the guest room. I stood in the doorway for a moment, watching their chests rise and fall. There's a strange peace in watching children breathe. It's proof that life goes on even when everything else collapses. Then came the knock. Firm, professional, the kind that carries authority. I knew before I opened the door. 2 officers stood on my porch, their uniforms dark against the pale morning. One was young, with polite uncertainty in his eyes. The other, Detective Brooks, was older, built like a man who'd seen too many sad things to be surprised anymore. He removed his hat and nodded. Mrs. Evelyn Parker? Yes, I said, steadying my voice. I'm Detective Brooks with the Lockhart Police Department. We received a report from Ms. Samantha Reed alleging that you're unlawfully detaining her children. Detaining. The word hit me like a slap. Those are my grandsons, I said quietly. They came to me because they were in danger. He studied me for a long moment, then gestured toward the living room. "May we come in?" Donna had warned me. Be calm, be polite, but document everything. So I took a deep breath, opened the door wider, and led them inside. The house smelled of coffee and lemon oil. The photos on the mantel, Ethan holding the boys, their toothless grins, felt like silent witnesses. "Would you like some coffee, Detective?" I asked, the old Southern habit slipping out. "No, ma'am. Just need to ask a few questions." He flipped open a small notebook. "When did the children arrive here?" 2 nights ago, during the storm." "And Ms. Reed was not with them?" "No. They were alone under the bridge by Lockhart Creek." The younger officer's eyes flicked up, startled. Brooks wrote something down, his brow furrowing. "They told you this?" "Yes," I said. "They were cold, hungry, and terrified. Samantha lied to me. She told me they'd moved to Canada after Ethan's death." He looked up, his tone softening. "Ethan Parker was your son?" I nodded. "Killed in that car crash 3 years ago. Or, so we were told." The words slipped out before I could stop them, and his head lifted slightly. "You believe otherwise?" "Let's just say I've learned not to trust what Samantha says." Before the conversation could go further, the sound of small footsteps came from the hallway. Oliver peeked in, hair sticking up, still rubbing sleep from his eyes. Jake followed, cautious but protective, his hand resting on his brother's shoulder. "Grandma?" Jake asked. "What's going on?" I forced a smile. "It's all right, sweetheart. These men just wanted to make sure you're okay." Brooks crouched to Oliver's height. "You boys doing all right here?" Oliver nodded shyly. "Grandma made pancakes." That small sentence did more for me than any legal defense ever could. Brooks stood, his eyes thoughtful. "Mrs. Parker, I'll need to file a temporary welfare report. That means a social worker will visit." "I understand." He hesitated before tipping his hat. "Between us, ma'am, I've seen neglect cases before. The boys look safe here." After they left, I closed the door and locked it. My hands were trembling, but not from fear. It was anger now, cold and precise. Samantha could twist the law, but she couldn't twist what was right. By mid-afternoon, Donna arrived. Her heels clicked across the wood floor like punctuation marks. "You did well," she said, setting down her briefcase. "Brooks called me. He's not convinced by Samantha's story." "Then why do I still feel like I'm on trial?" I asked. "Because you are," she said simply. "In cases like this, the truth takes time to catch up to the law." I showed her the text message I'd received from Frank. She took a photo of it, her mouth tightening. "Good. We'll use this." "Donna," I said, "I'm not losing them. Not again." She looked at me with something between admiration and worry. "Then you need to be ready. This won't just be about guardianship. It's about proving you can protect them." "I'll do whatever it takes," I said. "Use my savings, my pension, whatever you need." That night, I tucked the boys into bed again. The air smelled faintly of soap and stew. Oliver held the old stuffed bear against his chest. Jake lingered at the doorway. "Grandma," he said quietly, "are they going to take us away?" I knelt so we were eye to eye. "Not if I can help it." He looked down. "Mom said people always leave." I took his hand. "Then I guess we'll just have to prove her wrong." After they slept, I went to my room and opened the drawer where I kept Ethan's things, his watch, his old engineering notes, a faded photo of him holding newborn Jake. I ran my fingers over the face of the watch, its glass cracked but still ticking. "You'd know what to do, wouldn't you, Ethan?" I whispered. You always did. The phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. I didn't answer, but the message lit up the screen. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I stared at it for a long time, then set the phone face down. When dawn came again, the boys were laughing in the kitchen over cereal. The sound was fragile, like a bird testing its wings. For a moment, I let myself smile, but I knew better. Peace in my house was no longer the quiet kind. It was the pause before a fight. So I straightened my shoulders, poured my coffee, and prepared for whatever came next. Because being a grandmother, I was learning, isn't just about love. It's about standing your ground when the world calls it madness. And I was ready to fight. The days after the police visit passed in a strange, suspended calm, the kind that settles right before a storm tears through. The boys seemed lighter somehow, as if a small part of them finally believed they were safe. But I knew better. Safety, like love, is something you have to defend. I spent those mornings preparing for war in the only ways I knew: practical, quiet, relentless. I replaced the old locks with new ones, installed motion lights above the garage. Donna helped me set up security cameras, tiny glass eyes that watched over what little family I had left. While I worked, I found one of Ethan's old toolboxes tucked behind the shelves. Inside was his favorite wrench, still marked with a streak of blue paint from the time he'd fixed the porch railing. I held it in my palm, the weight of it grounding me. You built this house, I thought. You built this life, and they're not taking it from me. That night, while the boys drew at the kitchen table, I went through the documents Donna had given me. Forms for temporary guardianship, affidavits, receipts, photos. Every page was a battlefield of ink and memory. I clipped together the evidence: Samantha's neglect, Frank's threats, the police report, and signed where Donna had highlighted. Jake looked up. What's all that? It's what grown-ups use when the truth isn't enough, I said. He frowned. Do we have to go to court? Yes, sweetheart, but you don't have to be afraid. I'll be there the whole time. His eyes flicked down to his drawing, 3 stick figures holding hands. Underneath, in shaky letters, he'd written home. The next morning, I found an envelope slid under the front door. No name. Inside was a single page. Drop the case, or you'll lose more than custody. My hands went cold. I folded it neatly, placed it in a plastic bag, and called Donna. She told me not to worry, that threats lose power when you shine light on them, but fear doesn't care about light. It lives in your bones. Still, I refused to let it show. I cooked, cleaned, kept the house bright with music and the smell of cinnamon bread. I told the boys stories about Ethan as a kid, the time he'd fallen off his bike and refused to cry until he'd finished the popsicle he was holding. They laughed, and for a moment, the air in the house felt normal. Then came the court summons. The hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. I ironed my best dress, the same navy one I'd worn to Ethan's funeral, and tied my hair back tight. The courthouse in Lockhart looked exactly as it had when I was a nurse attending jury duty years ago. Pale yellow walls, wooden benches that smelled like varnish and nerves. Donna met me outside the courtroom, papers in hand. You ready? No, I said honestly. But I'm here. When we entered, Samantha was already there. I almost didn't recognize her. Her hair was styled, her clothes crisp and expensive. She looked like a woman playing a part, rehearsed and hollow behind the eyes. Frank sat beside her, smirking, wearing a jacket 2 sizes too small for his arrogance. When she turned and saw me, her face flickered, something between contempt and discomfort. "Evelyn," she said, voice sugar-coated. "You look, well." I met her gaze. "You look like someone who sleeps fine after lying." Her smile faltered. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair, called the room to order. Samantha's lawyer started first, painting me as an overbearing grandmother who couldn't accept the loss of her son and was projecting her grief through obsessive behavior. I sat still, my jaw tight. Every word felt like an insult to Ethan's memory. Then Donna stood, calm, sharp, steady. "Your Honor," she began, "my client has done nothing but protect her grandchildren after their mother abandoned them. We have photographs of the children's living conditions, text evidence of threats from Ms. Reed's partner, and police documentation confirming neglect." Brooks, the detective, was called to the stand. He spoke plainly. "When we arrived at Mrs. Parker's residence, the children were clean, fed, and safe. Ms. Reed's claim of abduction doesn't align with the evidence." Samantha's lawyer objected twice, overruled both times. When it was my turn to speak, my knees trembled, but I stood anyway. "Mrs. Parker," the judge said, "tell the court why you believe the children should remain in your care." I took a breath. "Because they're my son's boys. Because no child should sleep under a bridge while their mother spends insurance money meant for their future. Because I've already lost one generation, and I refuse to lose another." The courtroom was silent. Even Samantha didn't move. When the hearing ended, the judge didn't take long. "Pending full investigation, temporary guardianship of Jake and Oliver Parker is granted to their grandmother, Mrs. Evelyn Parker." I didn't cry. Not there. But when we walked out into the sunlight, the warmth on my face felt like a blessing. Jake grabbed my hand. "So, we can stay?" "For now," I said, smiling through the tightness in my throat. "For as long as I can fight for it." Behind us, I heard Frank's voice, low, angry. "You said no one could trace that money," he hissed at Samantha. She snapped, "Keep your voice down." But I heard it, every word, and so did Donna. We exchanged a glance. "What money?" I asked. Donna's eyes narrowed. "Looks like we just found the next thread to pull." That night, back home, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea. The sky was bruised purple, cicadas buzzing their endless hymn. The boys were inside, arguing over a board game, their laughter spilling out through the window like light. For the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. But peace never lasts in a story like mine. It only gives you room to breathe before the truth claws its way out. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and whispered to the stars, "Whatever comes next, Ethan, I'm ready." Because I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. And the deeper I looked, the clearer it became. His death hadn't been an accident. It had been a beginning. For the first time in years, laughter lived in this house again. It wasn't loud or careless. It was soft, uncertain, like a bird testing its wings after a storm. I'd catch it drifting down the hallway, the boys chasing each other with toy cars, their voices mixing with the rustle of leaves outside. And sometimes, in those moments, I'd catch myself smiling. Then, as quickly as it came, the smile would falter. Because beneath the warmth, something darker waited. The truth had begun to shift under my feet, whispering in the walls, asking the question I'd tried to bury. What really happened to Ethan? It started one afternoon while I was folding laundry. The phone rang. an unfamiliar number. "Mrs. Parker?" The voice was polite, measured. "This is Marcus Hill. I'm an investigator with Great Western Insurance. I was reviewing the claim from your son's accident 3 years ago. There seemed to be inconsistencies in the report." My throat tightened. "Inconsistencies?" "Yes, ma'am. The blood test indicated intoxication, but the levels were inconsistent with the crash reconstruction. And the lab technician who handled the sample, he's since been dismissed for misconduct. We'd like your permission to reopen the case." I gripped the counter. "You think Ethan's accident wasn't an accident?" There was a pause. "I think someone wanted it to look that way." When I hung up, my hands were trembling so badly I dropped the phone. It clattered against the tile, echoing through the house like a gunshot. That night, after dinner, I sat with Jake and Oliver on the couch. The firelight painted their faces gold and soft, and for a moment, I didn't want to ruin it with questions. But truth doesn't wait for the right time. "Boys," I began gently, "did your mom ever talk about your dad? About the night he passed?" Oliver looked up, chewing his lip. Jake's eyes flickered toward the flames. "She said it was his fault," he muttered. "That he drank too much. That he left us. Did she ever say anything else?" Jake hesitated, then lowered his voice. "Once. We heard her on the phone. She said, 'We're in the clear now. No one can prove anything.' Frank was with her." The fire cracked sharply, as if reacting to the words. I forced myself to stay calm. "And you're sure she said that?" Jake nodded. "She was crying. Then Frank laughed." For a long moment, the only sound was the ticking clock. I looked at Ethan's picture on the mantel, his grin frozen in a time before betrayal, before death. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, staring at the moonlit fields, the wind whispering through the pecan trees. No one can prove anything. Maybe they'd been wrong. Maybe I'd been blind. The next morning, I called Marcus back. "Do whatever you need to," I told him. "Find out what really happened." Days passed. While we waited, I busied myself with the small acts that kept me sane: cooking, quilting, tending to the boys. Healing isn't always a straight road. Sometimes it's a circle, returning you to the pain you thought you'd buried. Jake began to talk more. He told me about the months after Ethan's death, how Samantha had stopped working, how Frank came around with money, how the arguments grew louder and the nights longer. "She used to drink," Jake said softly. "A lot. Sometimes she forgot to pick us up from school. Oliver would wait by the fence until dark." Oliver looked down at his hands. "Frank said Dad was stupid, that he got what he deserved." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Later that evening, I found Oliver sitting on the porch steps, staring at the fading sky. "You okay, sweetheart?" I asked. He nodded. "Grandma, do you think Dad knows we're okay now?" I swallowed hard. "I think he does. I think that's why we found each other again." He smiled, a small trembling thing, and leaned his head on my shoulder. That night, the phone rang again. Marcus's voice was low, urgent. "Mrs. Parker, we found something. The brake lines on your son's car, they were cut. And the mechanic who handled his vehicle before the crash, he was paid in cash by someone using the name Frank Dalton." The world tilted. My hand tightened around the receiver. "Are you certain?" "Positive. We've turned everything over to Detective Brooks." When I hung up, I sat in silence, the air heavy around me. Rage moved through me like slow fire. Not the kind that burns wild, but the kind that hardens into steel. I went to the mantel and picked up Ethan's photo. "They killed you," I whispered. "They killed you and thought they'd get away with it." From the hallway, I heard soft footsteps. Jake stood there, watching me. "Grandma?" I forced a smile, though my voice shook. "Go back to bed, honey." But he didn't move. "You know something, don't you?" I met his eyes, the same green as Ethan's. "Yes, and we're going to make it right." The next morning, Detective Brooks came by. He stood in my kitchen, hat in his hands, expression grim. "Mrs. Parker, we've got enough to open a homicide case, but it'll be dangerous if they suspect you're involved." "I've already been in danger," I said. "They just don't know it yet." He gave a slow nod. "We'll need your help, Evelyn. You up for that?" I looked out the window where the boys were playing catch in the yard. Their laughter rose like music, innocent and bright. "I'm more than up for it," I said. "I owe it to him and to them." That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table, the moonlight spilling across Ethan's wrench on the counter. I turned it over in my hand, feeling its weight. Grief had once made me small. Now it made me sharp. I whispered into the quiet. "You wanted a fight, Frank? You just got one." The wind rustled through the pecan trees, and for a fleeting second, I could have sworn I heard Ethan's voice, calm and proud. "Go get them, Mom." And I intended to. Grief had lived in my house for 3 years, quiet and suffocating. But when Detective Brooks arrived that morning, grief turned into something else, something sharper. He stood on my porch with a folder in his hand, hat pulled low. "Mrs. Parker?" he said. "We've confirmed it. Your son's death wasn't an accident." The words didn't make sense at first. Then he opened the folder and spread out the photos across my kitchen table. Ethan's car crushed into a guardrail, black and white lab reports, a signed statement. "The brakes were cut," Brooks said quietly, "and the blood test was falsified. The lab tech was bribed, money traced to Frank Dalton." I stared at the papers, at the proof that my son hadn't died by fate, but by greed. "So, he killed Ethan," I whispered. Brooks hesitated. "We think Frank orchestrated it, but Samantha cashed the insurance payout, $200,000, just weeks later. It's hard to believe she didn't know." My chest tightened. "She knew," I said. "She always knew." "We're building a case," Brooks continued. "But to make it stick, we need a confession. Frank's cautious. He won't talk unless he feels in control." "I can get him to talk," I said. "Evelyn, that's dangerous." "So was trusting them," I replied. After he left, I sat at the table for a long time, staring at the photographs. The house was still, except for the hum of the refrigerator. Outside, the pecan tree Ethan planted swayed in the wind, its leaves whispering the secrets he'd taken to his grave. That afternoon, a text appeared on my phone from an unknown number. "Stop digging, Evelyn. You don't know what you're stirring up." I typed back before I could think. "You should have thought of that before killing my son." No reply. But that night, when I went to turn off the porch light, I found the back gate open and the smell of gasoline hanging in the air. My car tires were slashed, 4 clean wounds in the rubber. I didn't panic. I called Brooks. "He's been here," I said. "Stay inside. We'll send patrols." But fear had no place left in me. The next morning, Marcus Hill, the insurance investigator, called. "We traced a $10,000 withdrawal from Frank's account the day before the crash," he said. "The mechanic who serviced Ethan's car got the same amount a few days later." So he bought my son's death, I said. I'm afraid so, he answered. And there's more. Most of the insurance payout went into a joint account shared by Frank and Samantha. I hung up and pressed my palms against the table. For years, I'd carried the weight of Ethan's supposed mistakes. Now I knew it wasn't his sin, it was theirs. Donna stopped by that afternoon, urging caution. Evelyn, don't do anything reckless. Let the police handle it. They killed him, I said. And they'll pay for it. That night, Brooks called again. If you're serious, we can wire you. Try to get Frank to talk. We'll be nearby. I'm ready, I said. He thinks I'm weak. That'll be his mistake. The following morning, a message came through. Frank, meet me at the old service station on Route 9. Bring what's mine. I told the boys I had errands, kissed them goodbye, and drove out. The road stretched long and empty beneath a gray sky. Brooks followed several cars behind, silent. The station was a skeleton of peeling paint and rust. Frank leaned against his truck, cigarette glowing in the gloom. You've been busy, Grandma, he said with a sneer. You killed my son, I said. He laughed. He killed himself. I just made sure the money went to the right place. You cut his brakes, I said. The smirk faltered. You've been talking to people you shouldn't. You paid the mechanic, I pressed. You bribed the lab. You let my grandsons believe their father was a drunk. Frank stepped closer, voice low. You don't understand, Evelyn. Ethan had debts. Samantha wanted out. I helped her. We all got what we wanted. She wanted him dead, I said. She wanted a new life. I gave it to her. I stared at him, every nerve screaming to stay calm. And guilt? You feel none. He shrugged. Guilt doesn't pay bills? Brooks's voice came softly through my earpiece. We've got it. Move in. Red and blue lights burst across the cracked pavement. Frank spun, swearing, but the police were already there. He lunged once before they slammed him against his truck. As they cuffed him, he turned toward me, eyes blazing. You think this ends with me? She's worse than I am. She made me do it. I didn't look away. Then you can tell the judge. When the sirens faded, the silence left behind felt enormous. I stood there under the wide Texas sky, wind tugging at my hair, heart pounding in my chest. That night, after tucking the boys into bed, I sat at the table with a cup of tea gone cold. I looked at Ethan's photo, the same easy grin, the same light that even death couldn't dim. They confessed, son, I whispered. But I'm not finished. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. Another storm was coming. This time, I wouldn't hide. This time, I'd walk straight through it. The morning after Frank's arrest, the house felt still in a way that was almost unnatural, like the calm after a scream. The boys were at school, and I sat in the kitchen with a mug of coffee, growing cold between my hands, replaying every word Frank had said. She's worse than I am. She made me do it. Samantha. I should have felt relief knowing one of them was behind bars, but instead, I felt the hum of unfinished business vibrating in my bones. Frank might have done the dirty work, but Samantha was the one who'd drawn the map. By noon, Detective Brooks was back at my door. The dark circles under his eyes said he hadn't slept. He carried another folder, thinner this time, but heavier in its weight. Frank's been talking, he said as he stepped inside. He's already trying to make a deal. What did he say? I asked. That Samantha orchestrated the whole thing. She was in debt. Credit cards, mortgage, everything. When Ethan's life insurance came through, she saw a way out. Frank claims she convinced him Ethan was planning to cut her off financially. She told him, and I quote, "It's not murder, it's survival." The words made my stomach twist. Do you believe him? I believe parts of it, Brooks said carefully. Enough to bring her in for questioning. But we need more than his word. She's smart, cunning. She'll play the victim and juries fall for that kind of performance. I leaned back in my chair, the old wood creaking beneath me. Then you'll need her to confess. He met my eyes. That's what we're hoping you can help us with. I blinked. You want me to talk to her? She trusts you, or at least thinks she can manipulate you. If she admits what she did, even indirectly, it'll be enough to charge her. The idea made my pulse quicken. You think she'll meet me? She will, he said, if she thinks you have something she needs. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark living room with Ethan's old photo album open across my lap. There he was, smiling on a fishing trip, standing by the river with his arm around Samantha. I remembered how I'd once thought she was a blessing. Bright, ambitious, good for him. But in that smile, I saw it now. Calculation disguised as charm. When dawn came, I texted her. Me. We need to talk. About the boys. About Ethan. Samantha. You shouldn't contact me, Evelyn. Me. Then you'll want to hear what Frank told me. The 3 dots blinked for nearly a minute. Then, Samantha. Where? We agreed to meet at the diner off Highway 183, the one where Ethan had taken her on their first date. I could almost hear the poetry of her arrogance, meeting me in the same place she'd once played the innocent. Donna and Brooks wired me again. Keep her talking, Brooks said as we sat in the car outside. Don't push too hard. Let her think she's still in control. I know her type, I said. She'll hang herself if I give her enough rope. When she walked in, I barely recognized her. Samantha looked immaculate. Designer blazer, manicured nails, eyes tired but defiant. She slid into the booth across from me, like we were 2 old friends catching up. Evelyn, she said, forcing a smile. You look well. I wish I could say the same, I replied. Her jaw tightened. What did Frank tell you? That you planned it. She laughed softly, shaking her head. You believe a criminal over your own daughter-in-law? I leaned forward, my voice low. He said you told him Ethan was going to cut you off, that you called it survival. Her eyes flickered just for a second. Then she composed herself. He's lying. Then why take the insurance money? I asked. Why disappear? Why let the boys think their father was a drunk? Samantha's mask cracked. Because it was easier that way, she snapped. Then, catching herself, she softened her tone. You don't understand, Evelyn. Ethan was going to leave me. He said I was a burden, that I couldn't manage the house or the kids. He didn't love me anymore. That's not true, I said quietly. He was trying to help you. Her voice trembled now, half anger, half confession. He was going to take everything, every cent, every bit of security. I had nothing. I did what I had to do. I stared at her, feeling the air go thin. So, you helped Frank kill him. Her eyes darted toward the window, then back at me. I didn't touch the car, she hissed. I just told Frank when Ethan would be driving home. For a heartbeat, the diner felt silent except for the hum of the fluorescent lights. That's enough, I said softly. Outside, the world exploded in sirens. The police swarmed in through the front door. Samantha froze, eyes wide as Brooks approached, badge raised. Samantha Reed, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder insurance fraud, and child endangerment. She turned to me, her voice breaking. You tricked me. I met her gaze. No, you tricked yourself. They let her out, her heels clicking against the tile like a metronome, counting the end of a long, bitter song. I sat there for a long while after, staring at the untouched coffee between us. When I finally stepped outside, the sunlight hit my face like a blessing. The wind carried the faint scent of honeysuckle and rain, and for the first time since Ethan's death, I breathed without pain. That night, I cooked dinner for the boys, Ethan's favorite stew. Jake set the table. Oliver stirred the pot with the seriousness of a scientist. The house smelled like home again. After we ate, Jake looked up at me. Grandma? He asked. Is it really over now? I thought about Samantha in her cell, about Frank behind bars, about Ethan's photo smiling from the mantel. I reached across the table and took his hand. It's over, sweetheart. We're safe now. Later, after they were asleep, I stood by the window. The moon hung low, silver and watchful. Somewhere, far away, I imagined Ethan smiling too, not the ghost of a son lost, but the memory of a man finally at peace. And me? I didn't feel vengeful anymore. I felt free. The courthouse smelled like polished wood and nerves. I'd been here before, for parking tickets, for jury duty, but never like this. Never to watch the people who destroyed my family stand trial for murder. I sat on the hard bench outside the courtroom, my palms damp against my skirt, a folder of documents resting on my lap. Inside, Samantha and Frank were being led to their seats in matching orange jumpsuits, shackles clinking softly like ghosts following them. Donna sat beside me, composed as always, a calm harbor in a storm. You don't have to testify if it's too much, she whispered. I shook my head. No, I have to. Ethan deserves to be heard, even if it's through me. When we entered, the room buzzed with quiet anticipation. Reporters filled the back rows. I could feel their curiosity pressing against my back like static. Frank sat slouched beside his lawyer, his face bruised, eyes flat and lifeless. Samantha looked worse, pale, hollow-eyed, her once perfect posture slumped in defeat. But even then, she tried to meet my gaze, and when she did, I saw no remorse, only fear. The prosecutor began, outlining the story piece by piece. The cut break lines, the falsified reports, the stolen insurance money. Every word was a knife, reopening wounds that hadn't finished healing. Then came my turn. The bailiff called my name, and I walked to the stand. My legs trembled, but my voice, when it came, was steady. I'm Evelyn Parker, I began, mother of Ethan Parker, grandmother to Jake and Oliver. The prosecutor nodded. Mrs. Parker, tell the court what happened the night you found your grandsons. I swallowed. It was raining. I was driving home from my quilting class when I saw two boys under the bridge by Lockhart Creek. They were shivering, filthy. I didn't realize until I got close. It was them, my grandsons, the same boys Samantha told me had moved to Canada. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. I continued. They told me, their mother said, I didn't want them anymore, that I told her to leave. But I never said that. I never would. My voice wavered, and for a second, the room blurred. I brought them home, and that night, everything changed. The prosecutor guided me through the rest. The lies, the threats, the investigation, the moment Frank confessed. When he asked if I could identify the man responsible for my son's death, I turned in my seat and looked straight at Frank. He didn't flinch, but Samantha did. She looked away, her hands twisting in her lap, For the first time, I saw the truth in her face, not defiance, but the weight of her own undoing. When my testimony ended, I stepped down and returned to my seat, my heart pounding. Donna gave my hand a quick squeeze. Hours passed like years. The prosecutor's voice was clear and sharp, while the defense scrambled, painting Samantha as a victim manipulated by Frank. But the evidence was too strong. Bank records, text messages, the recording of her words in the diner. By the third day of the trial, the jury returned with their verdict. Frank Dalton, guilty on all counts. He didn't react, just stared straight ahead as if the word guilty were a language he couldn't speak. Then came Samantha. The judge's voice filled the silence. Samantha Reed, guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and neglect. The words echoed through the courtroom like thunder. Samantha gasped, covering her face with her hands, sobbing. Whether from guilt or self-pity, I couldn't tell. When it was over, I walked out of that courthouse feeling both lighter and heavier at once. Justice had a strange taste, bittersweet, metallic, like rain on rust. Outside, Jake and Oliver waited with Donna. When they saw me, they ran straight into my arms. Jake clung to me so tightly it almost hurt. "Is it done?" he asked. "It's done," I whispered. "They can't hurt us anymore." We stood there, 3 survivors bound by love and loss, under the bright Texas sun. The courthouse loomed behind us, but I didn't look back. That evening we went home. The air smelled of rain and clean earth. I made dinner, Ethan's favorite stew, and we ate together at the kitchen table where everything had begun. The boys laughed about school. Oliver told a story about a spelling bee he'd won. Their laughter was real this time, unburdened, healing. Afterward, we went out to the backyard. The pecan tree Ethan had planted was taller than ever, its branches stretching wide. Jake helped me hang a small wind chime from one of the limbs. The soft notes drifted through the warm evening air. "For Dad," Jake said. "For Dad," I echoed. When night fell, I sat alone on the porch with a cup of tea and watched the stars rise. Somewhere out there, I like to think Ethan was watching too. Proud, peaceful, finally free. Donna called later to tell me the boy's guardianship had been officially granted. Permanently. No more hearings, no more threats. Just us. I thanked her, hung up, and let the quiet settle around me. For the first time in years, it wasn't heavy. It was gentle. Inside, I could hear the boys whispering as they got ready for bed. Laughter spilled down the hall, soft, innocent, alive. I whispered a prayer into the night. "Thank you, Ethan, for bringing them back to me, for giving me the strength to finish this." And when I closed my eyes, I didn't see the wreckage or the lies anymore. I saw the 3 of us standing in the sunlight, whole again. People say justice doesn't heal, that it only closes a chapter. But they're wrong. Sometimes justice is the first step toward forgiveness, not for them, but for yourself. That night, as the wind stirred the chimes outside, I realized I was finally free to remember Ethan not for how he died, but for how he lived, how he loved. And in that quiet Texas house, surrounded by laughter and second chances, I knew one thing for certain. We had survived the fire, and from its ashes, we had built a home again. 2 years have passed since the trial, and some mornings, I still wake before dawn expecting the house to echo with sorrow. But it doesn't. The air smells of coffee, cinnamon, and something softer. Peace. Outside my kitchen window, the pecan tree that Ethan planted sways gently in the wind. Jake and Oliver are taller now, teenagers with sharp minds and the kind of laughter that fills the house instead of haunting it. They've been building something extraordinary together, a project they call Heartline Systems, a small tech startup that somehow feels like it carries Ethan's spirit in every line of code. Sometimes I watch them at the dining table, laptops open, faces glowing with the blue light of creation. And I think, this is what survival looks like. Not the absence of pain, but the courage to build something beautiful in its shadow. The walls of this house hold so many ghosts. Ethan's voice, my grief, even Samantha's deceit. But now, those memories have softened. They no longer choke the air. They're simply part of us. It's Christmas Eve tonight, the third one we've spent together since everything changed. Outside, Lockhart is draped in lights. Porches lined with garlands, the scent of wood smoke drifting through the streets. Inside, the fire crackles, casting an amber glow over the living room. I can hear Jake humming softly, while Oliver fusses with the decorations, insisting every ornament must be perfectly spaced. I smile to myself as I pull a quilt from the basket beside the couch. It's the same patchwork I started during that first awful winter after Ethan's death. Only now it's finished. The old fabric, Ethan's flannel shirts, bits of the boys' baby blankets, has been stitched together with new pieces. Bright reds, soft creams, deep blues. Past and present woven into one story. When the boys finally join me by the fire, Jake plops down on the rug, stretching out his long legs. Oliver curls up on the other side, fiddling with the hem of his sweater. "Grandma?" Jake says suddenly, his voice deeper now, but still boyish around the edges. "I think Dad would be really proud of you." The words hit harder than I expect. For a moment, I can't speak. I just look at him, at the echo of Ethan in his jawline, his steady eyes, and feel tears prick at the corners of mine. I take a slow breath, the kind that fills the silence instead of breaking it. "Maybe," I say softly, "but I think he'd be proud of you both more. You found a way to turn pain into purpose." Oliver leans his head against my shoulder. "You taught us that." I smile. "No, sweetheart. You taught me." The clock ticks quietly. Outside, snow begins to fall. Not much, just a thin veil of white dusting the ground. In Texas, snow feels like a miracle. And maybe that's what this moment is too. A quiet miracle, born from years of fire and loss. I pull the quilt around us, the weight of it warm and grounding. "You?" "No," I begin, my voice low and steady. "For a long time, I thought losing your father broke me for good, that I'd never feel whole again. But maybe we don't heal by erasing the cracks. Maybe we heal by learning to live with them." Jake glances up. "Like the quilt?" I laugh softly. Exactly like the quilt. The firelight flickers across their faces, and I can almost see Ethan sitting across from me, his arm draped along the back of the couch. That quiet, reassuring smile of his. For the first time, it doesn't hurt to see him there in my mind. It feels right. When the boys finally go to bed, I stay by the fire a while longer, tracing the stitches of the quilt beneath my fingertips. Each one tells a story, some of love, some of loss, but all of them real. I think about the road that brought us here, the rain, the lies, the courtroom, the fire that nearly consumed us. And somehow, I'm grateful for all of it, because every wound, every scar, led to this moment, to laughter in a warm house, to two boys who still believe the world can be kind. I rise and walk to the window. Outside, the world glows soft beneath the snowfall. The old tire swing creaks gently in the wind, and beyond it, The pecan tree stands tall and unyielding. I whisper into the quiet. We did it, Ethan. We made it through. And for just a moment, the wind shifts, and I swear I can hear his voice again, low, steady, and full of love. You always were the strongest one, Mom. A tear slips down my cheek, but this time it feels like release, not pain. I turn back toward the fire, smiling through the blur. People say I saved my grandsons, I murmur, but the truth is, they saved me. The clock chimes midnight. The fire crackles, steady and bright. Love, I whisper, touching the quilt's final stitch, is the thread that holds us together when everything else falls apart. The embers shift, glowing like tiny stars. I sit down, close my eyes, and let the warmth settle deep into my bones. Outside, the snow keeps falling, quiet and patient, covering the scars of the earth one flake at a time. And somewhere beneath that gentle white silence, our story rests. No longer one of revenge or grief, but of love rebuilt, piece by piece, stitch by stitch. Because healing isn't forgetting, it's remembering and choosing to live anyway. They say revenge only makes the wound bleed longer. But for me, it was not about destroying someone. It was about reclaiming the truth for the person who no longer had the chance to defend themselves. Life never gives back what we have lost, but sometimes justice helps us recover the part of ourselves we thought died along with the pain. Now, when the flame of anger has cooled, only love remains. The only thing strong enough to mend those torn lives. I no longer want anyone to collapse. I only hope those who caused the hurt will bow their heads, and those who have been hurt will be brave enough to stand up. If it were you, upon learning that the one you love most has been taken by another's hand, would you choose silence and letting go? Or would you stand up to reclaim the light for them? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Not to judge, but to understand together. Sometimes, forgiveness is also the most beautiful form of revenge a person can choose.